welcome to a new edition of France in Focus. I'm Nadia Charby, and this week you join us at the Hôtel Dieu de Château Thierry, an ancient hospital some 95 kilometers east of Paris, to talk about French heritage and its ailments. Founded by Queen Jeanne de Navarre in 1304, what was initially a modest church-run infirmary was then remodeled in the 17th and 19th centuries to accommodate larger facilities and has fallen into disrepair since its closure in the 1980s. And while France is famed for its grand old monuments, paying for the upkeep of the country's smaller historic sites is proving quite the puzzle. A novel but controversial solution currently being tested is that of a heritage lottery to fund repairs and renovations on key buildings, including this one. But more on that later. Another option is crowdfunding. Named after the famous musketeer, website D'Artagnan was founded in 2017. Its first project is a romantic, if run-down chateau that has brought in 1.6 million euros in donations. Hailing from 115 countries, some 27,910 people are now the proud co-owners of the site. France 24 went to check it out.
Bonjour à tous. Bonjour.
Around a dozen visitors have come to see the castle.
Je suppose qu'il y a un certain nombre de collectionneurs parmi vous? Oui, dites-moi.
Some of these men and women helped buy the Chandonnier Château, like this English couple who are seeing it in person for the first time.
It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's just so amazing, just to see it there. But then at the same time, to see the condition it's in and think, how can it be repaired?
Since it was destroyed by a fire in 1932, this neo-Gothic castle has become a living ruin where plants and stones intertwine. Eliane Lamac has been living next door to what she calls her beautiful neighbor for the last 25 years.
C'est presque une chimère, je veux dire.
It's dreamlike. If you take it to the extreme, you could say that thanks to the fire, this marvelous thing appeared. I see it almost like a work of art.
The visitors are enchanted.
Oui, quand même, ça fait quelque chose, oui. J'adore ce site, j'adore le château.
On est venu et on est véritablement, je sais pas, moi je suis emballé, sous le charme. Franchement, sous le charme.
This gargantuan project saw the day thanks to D'Artagnan, a crowdfunding site.
This is the heart of the financial project of the Chandonnier Castle. We've had the keys since March, and it's been open to visitors and guided tours since July. In 2.5 months, we've had almost 5,000 visitors.
Of France's 40,000 castles, 600 are said to be in bad shape. This kind of initiative helps to restore historic landmarks, though here, the new owners want to preserve its air of mystery. Restoration works are set to begin in October.
People come to the site, buy an entry ticket, buy merchandise, and that generates income that is then entirely reinvested in the restoration works.
Each share equals 1 vote, and all decisions are taken in a democratic way. The 27,000 shareholders can debate ideas on a page of the website that only they can access.
Of course, we're not going to have people vote on the color of the lawnmower or the menu of possible future festivals, but rather on which part of the castle to restore or what kind of economic development to pursue. People have to be able to talk amongst themselves and exchange views.
The small company has big dreams. A new project is in the pipelines. This time, internet users are invited to become lords over this fortified medieval castle.
Well, crowdfunding initiatives are one way forward, but obviously insufficient on their own. In fact, some specialists now warn that France's heritage is under threat. One of them is our guest, French art historian Didier Rickner. Hello, thank you very much for being with us. Now, as we've just seen, foreigners, tourists flock to France to see, if not crowdfund, our heritage sites here. But do you think the French are sufficiently interested in this issue?
Actually, in fact, I think French people are very interested in heritage because as soon as there's an open day for heritage sites, we have hundreds of thousands of people queuing to see these monuments. But they probably don't know that the funding these sites receive is really insufficient. Once they finish their visit, they go about their daily lives, and in the meantime, some of these buildings are crumbling. I think it's due to a lack of education. Art history and heritage isn't specifically taught at school. They do touch upon it, but not in an effective way. So I think if people were more aware of these issues, then our heritage sites would be in better shape.
Now, I mentioned earlier that this Hôtel Dieu, this former hospital, is on the list of sites that will benefit from a new heritage lottery. Could you tell us a bit about how that works and also why it's coming under fire?
So this is how it works. People will play. They'll buy tickets which we think should generate between 15 and 20 million euros, and there are certain monuments which have been selected, like this one, for example. 18 priority sites and plenty of others, 2 dozens that will also receive funding. So here they're planning to allocate at least €250,000, which is not that much for a project that overall costs €7.5 million. So it's not much, but it will allow us to get the project off the ground, get some publicity for a site that's not that well known, and then we'll have to finance the rest of the work.
And there's been criticism on this.
Yes, there has been some criticism of the project. 15 to 20 million is not that much, but it's something at least. And of the overall revenues of the lottery, it's only between 10 and 25% which goes to heritage renovations. The rest goes into production costs, distribution, but that's the case for all lotteries. And who's going to play? Well, not necessarily heritage enthusiasts, but people who will play this lottery rather than another one, and instead of the money going to the state, it'll go to heritage projects.
Now, these buildings have stood and hopefully will stand for centuries, but obviously politics play out on a much shorter timescale. Is there perhaps a political aspect to the way various leaderships have handled the question of France's heritage?
Not really. In France, you have right-wing politicians who work to protect cultural heritage, others who work to destroy it. On the left, it's the same. Some are for preservation, others demolition. In fact, there have been different trends in recent French history. In the 60s and 70s, there was a lot of demolition. Then Giscard d'Estaing was elected and he put a stop to that. For example, the Orsay train station should have been demolished, but it wasn't in the end. Then came François Mitterrand with his culture minister Jacques Lang, and that was the real golden age for heritage projects. Then there was a bit of a fall, first with Nicolas Sarkozy, then under François Hollande it was even worse. And I do worry that President Macron is not on the right track either, even if he did create this heritage lottery.
Didier, thank you very much. We'll come back to you in just a minute. Now, when talking about France's heritage, you might be tempted to think about churches or castles, but there's another type of site that's even more under threat, and that is those linked to the country's working classes. One such example is the quarter of Saint-Jacques in Perpignan. There, local authorities want to use a new law to destroy and rebuild rather than restore simple yet historic buildings. Take a look.
Street life in the Saint-Jacques neighbourhood in Perpignan. In this picturesque district, some houses date back to medieval times. Nick Jimenez is the 5th generation of his family to live here. Now municipal authorities have been demolishing the buildings they consider to be insalubrious, one by one.
That house over there is endangered, and they pulled that one down. On the other side was my mother-in-law's house. That went down too, it just crumbled.
Locals are concerned that more houses will be lost. Soon, the new ailments law will allow mayors to demolish structures not fit for habitation, and state-sanctioned expert architects won't be allowed to veto the decision. Here in Perpignan, however, the neighbourhood is listed as important architectural heritage, with a grouping of 13th century buildings, which many are seeking to protect and preserve.
It's not all beautiful architecture with sculptures and moldings. They're not stately homes. But we're in a working-class neighborhood. It's in the local style, and that contributes to the character of the town. It's part of Perpignan.
So could the ailments law strip the city of its identity? Its mayor doesn't think so. He's more worried about the state of certain buildings, which pose a safety risk.
There are buildings here which have no special architectural value, and some of them have been pulled down. And I'll remind you that 40% of these houses are vacant or not fit for habitation. That provides us with the opportunity to demolish them and replace them with what local people need, and that's housing.
Most residents here are pushing for renovations instead of demolitions, as they fear the soul of their neighbourhood could be reduced to rubble.
Now, Didier, obviously, it's hard to save all of France's heritage sites, but surely these more modest traces of the country's history should also be a priority.
Obviously, the Perpignan neighborhood we were talking about just now is a protected area. That means that integral parts of it must be conserved. If you walk around in that neighborhood, you'll see that the houses are beautiful. They look wonderful when they've been restored. You'd think that you were walking around an Italian town. So of course we need to safeguard that.
And yet there's also a threat to the ultimate French heritage site, Versailles. Tell us about that.
The case of Versailles is not very well known outside of France, and even here, not many people know that the palace has been repeatedly vandalized by the people in charge of its conservation. It's extremely worrying. Recently, a whole wing near the entrance was totally gutted. The inside dated back to the 18th, early 19th century, and the walls were from the 17th century, and it was completely gutted to build some sort of lobby space that would be even a bit kitsch for somewhere like Abu Dhabi. They did this to cut down the queues, but the queues are still just as long, and meanwhile they've destroyed a whole wing of the Château de Versailles. Do you think that's right?
So given all this, what would you say are the priorities? What are your solutions to help save French heritage sites?
As I was saying, giving a bit more money to heritage sites, which can be done without raising taxes, because the Ministry of Culture doesn't exactly allocate a lot of their budget to this sector, but it's also about respecting existing laws. There's no need to make new laws, we simply need to respect the ones we have. For example, in Perpignan, they're already demolishing houses when the Élan law has not yet been put in place.
Didier Rickner, thank you very much. And we'll leave you on some more pictures of the Hôtel Dieu de Château Thierry. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to France 24.